Hello and welcome to the Tachiai, Aki Banzuke podcast. I'm Associate Editor Bruce. With me is Josh. Say hello, Josh.
Hello, Josh.
And Andy. Say hello, Andy.
Howdy.
So it's been a wild couple of months, and I think we should all say a giant hearty thank you to Harith, who has done an absolutely masterful job of covering the Jungyo and keeping us all from having horrific, shaking sumo withdrawals for the last couple of months.
Yes, definitely a big thank you to Harith, and it really makes me want to go out and see one of these Jungyo events. And I know Josh has done it. I'm jealous, so I'm hoping to be able to do that next time.
Yeah, you know, there are a growing list of things that we all wish we could be like Josh about. Josh, just how many Hanbasho are you going to attend in the next 6 months?
Well, I've had some serious withdrawals. I'm like itching over here. I didn't get to Nagoya, which I think is okay. Obviously, we saw the ice blocks that had been brought in there to kind of help.
You didn't miss a thing.
The sweltering heat. I was there last year. It was seriously hot, and that was actually on a day when it was raining. So, not too sad to miss out on that one. But I did get to the first three this year, and it was a great experience. It's always a great experience. I got to go to Osaka for the first time. I won't be there this time, but I'm going to make it out to Fukuoka. So it'll be my first time there.
You bastard.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun, and it's been cool. I really appreciate the chance to share the experience of being there with folks on the site. So we'll see what I get up to in November.
The food is so awesome. Western Japan is my old stomping ground, so I'm having flashbacks here. So Banzuke came out on Sunday, featured a whole bunch of fun and interesting stuff. Let's go through some of the crazy things that we've got going on here. Just first off, Andy, any thoughts or reactions on the Banzuke? I know Leonard did some again amazing forecasting stuff, but still, when you look at it, you have to think Aki is going to be this crazy madcap circus of probably people dropping out Kyujo. Thoughts, Andy?
Yeah, no, and the thing is, with so many Sanyaku wrestlers not quite 100%, I'm like every single time expecting wrestlers from the Joy to I guess capitalize, but everybody seems to still really struggle in those top four Maegashira ranks, and there's always quite a bit of churn. So even with big names like I'm hoping for good things from Abi, but Endo, Ikioi, like Shodai can hang with the Joy, I think, but Kaisei might find himself falling back down. Chiyonokuni, I'm not sure. But yeah, Endo and Ikioi, I'm hoping that they'll be able to finally get over their Joy curses and hang around for a little while.
All right, Josh, reactions to the Banzuke. Anything you want to talk about straight off the top?
Yeah, well, let me talk to Andy's point for a minute here. I mean, usually you see guys roll up into this area of the Banzuke and they get stomped, right? It's like you go back 4 months from now. Takayama was up there, and even though he did well in terms of how he fought, and everyone was really admirable when it came to his performance, he ended up going 2-13 or whatever, and he falls all the way back down because it's a rude introduction to a much higher level of competition than you see even at Maegashira 6, Maegashira 7. So it's kind of interesting that now, Andy called out a lot of these names, and even though there's some churn, it's kind of a fairly settled and predictable group of guys. It's like Chiyotairu's in there, Ikioi's always in there, Shodai's been in there a lot, Endo's been in there a lot. Sometimes they'll go up to Komusubi for a minute, sometimes they'll drop down to Maegashira 6 or 7, but by and large, they've kind of controlled that space, and really only Takakeisho among the newbies, has made it through with any considered momentum, which was disrupted for a minute due to injury. So, the question for him, I would say, Takakeisho is an interesting one to watch because, now that he's back, looks like he's healthy. Can he take that next step? Or does he kind of hold serve along with some of these guys,
Yep.
And I, with Andy, the likes of Kaisei could struggle, but I'd be looking at that.
Good points all, guys. So let's dive into a bit of who's Genki and who's not. Um, I know that there's been a lot of PR work, shall I say, that's happened during the Jungyo to try and make everyone feel like, yeah, the top men of sumo, they're rough and ready to go, and it's going to be a great basho here in September in Tokyo. But you peel back the PR veneer a little bit, and it gets ugly fast. So let's talk about Kakuryu, who's one East Yokozuna. He looked really rough during Jungyo, and we like to say you can't really tell what's going on from Jungyo, but in general, I mean, the guy's got to have some pride. He can't look like he's off balance and sort of fighting on one leg day after day and expect people to not go. I think there's something wrong there. Guys, is there something wrong there?
Yes. And I'm just hopeful that the week plus of rest will allow him to recuperate enough to where he can not only start but finish this one. I'm not expecting a yusho push really from any of the yokozuna. Kakuryu probably. I'm hopeful for a 10 wins.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, solid. Josh, thoughts on Kakuryu?
Yeah, I don't see it. I mean, I think he looked like a little bit of a mess in the early part of the Jungyo. I think we said this last time. I mean, he won 2 yusho already this year. He's had a really good comeback year, and I don't think he has a whole lot to prove. In terms of his relevance as a yokozuna, and we've said over and over again, if these guys are going to come out, we want to see him for 15 days. The sport, and especially when you have a situation where there's a guy in an ozeki run, I appreciate we'll get to Mitakeumi in a little bit, but how he does against the top guys is going to be really, really important in this tournament, and he's not going to face any of those guys until the second week. And so I think it would be good for the scheduling, for the tournament, for everybody. It's like, if you're fit and you can compete, then show up. And if you don't, if you don't feel that you're 1,000%, then, or even 80%, then don't. And so I hope if he shows up, then he looks great. But I don't think that he looks that great.
All right. So talking about my number one candidate for not even starting the Aki Basho, One West Hakuho. He has had trouble all through Jungyo. He continues to look like his undercarriage is in bad shape. Josh, thoughts on the Dai Yokozuna?
Yeah, well, he had a freak injury. I mean, the thing with Hakuho is that he's done such a good job to control the injuries that he's had over a long period of time. We all know about the toe injuries he's had, and he's come back and he's actually made, by some accounts, a little bit of a show of going, well, actually, I go over the top. I do yoga. I do all these things to help me overcome these issues that I have with my toes. And then he has a totally different freak injury during the Nagoya tournament, as you said, during the Jungyo. He hasn't looked...
There's a slip and fall in the dressing room, for heaven's sake.
Right.
What an embarrassing way to go Kyujo.
Yeah, no kidding. But, I mean, it's a weird one because then at the same time, and I realize I always seem to come across as this, Hakuho apologist, but, these guys carry so much weight above there that a slip and a fall for guys with that kind of build is probably not very fun, though they do it for a living. But I don't see it. I think again it's a similar thing. He seems to have serious issues, and if he has serious issues, I think the sport and himself would be better served by him coming back strong later this year.
So let me read a little something that Kintamiyama just put out on his newsletter, that he was training at home with Enho today. Keeping his left knee bandaged. He liked when the press was asking him, he said, yeah, I sweated well, but, I still have some pain, and we'll just have to see how it goes. So, some very guarded language from a Rikshi who had been, sort of solidly, it's going to take an ambulance before I show up and do my doyo iri and pound somebody into the clay. Andy, thoughts about Hakuho?
I am very, very hopeful that he's just playing coy and taking it easy before the tournament. I am really, really eager for a 80% Hakuho to come out and put together 12 wins.
Superior to no Hakuho at all, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I would. It would be very disappointing to not see Hakuho. I mean, it would be more disappointing to see Hakuho start the tournament and not finish.
Mm-hmm.
But I would be very, very excited to see him day 15, maybe not even in the yusho race, but at least competing, getting a Yokozuna Kachikoshi.
Yep.
That would be nice.
Yeah, I personally really hope he sticks around long enough to face both Mitaka Yumi and Tochinoshin, because I think those are really, sort of crucial test matches. All right, on to the man of mystery, none other than the great pumpkin himself, Kisano Sato, who has, for reasons I can't explain, I don't know if it's some sort of coordinated PR effort or what, he actually doesn't look too shabby in Jungyo, and he's actually doing, probably 80 to 85% full strength bouts with Takayasu now. Is he going to give it a try? Okay, Andy, you go first. What do you think about Kisano Sato?
I think so. I mean, I think he's at the end of his rope, honestly. And,
the end of a Yokozuna's rope.
Exactly. So I think it's make or break time for him, and I mean, it's about time. It's been a year and a plus, and we really need to. I don't know, with so much injury and so many guys going Kyujo, we really need to start seeing some intai for things other than controversy. So.
Nicely put. Josh, thoughts about Kisano Sato?
Yeah, I kind of feel like there's two different points here. The first one, Bruce, is kind of, how does he look compared to, in the Jungyo, compared to Hakuho and Kakeru, as the other Yokozuna. It's, hey, I'm sitting here in California talking to you guys on a podcast, but you would think as a Yokozuna, it's kind of hard not to look good compared to those guys,
right?
Given where they're at right now. So it is kind of tough to divorce that from the question of, is this a Yokozuna who's fit to come out and give a Yokozuna performance?
Yep.
I think, he could. I mean, maybe this is the time where he could. I mean, we don't know that he's ever going to get back to a level of serious competitiveness, but, who knows? As Andy said, there's so many injuries. There's so many folks that dropped out of the last tournament. Maybe there's this luck that comes together and he just gets a great little run of fixtures that come together for him, and he can put a few folks away and he can go out with the dignity that he deserves. So fingers crossed.
So for those of you who follow the team on Twitter, you'll note that Haruth and I have been discussing quite openly differing viewpoints on whether Kisano Sato is got it together enough to even give it a try. Personally, I think we're going to see him enter. We're probably going to see him pull out by day 10 after he gets his 8th win. And possibly no one's going to say a damn thing. And it's going to be okay with everyone. But let's, I'm going to skip over Goedo right now because Goedo's this constant, he practices well and squeaks by on Hanbasho. And let's go talk about Takayasu. So Takayasu, he sat out most of Jungyo. He's been hurt, and he limped through Nagoya, and now he's coming into Aki. He still has not had a yusho, and that's the fascinating thing that he's this hope that maybe he's a future generation mainstay or Ozeki, or possibly even he can try for higher rank once there's intai on some of the Yokozuna, but you gotta wonder about his health right now. So Josh, thoughts about Takayasu?
Yeah, well, he's a guy who's not getting, any younger either. I mean, I guess none of us are getting any younger. But
what are you talking about, you young whippersnapper?
But it's a strange situation because, Bruce, you've used the word chaotic a lot to describe his sumo, and we've also talked ad nauseum, as have a lot of people who talk about sumo or about Takayasu, about how much he misses training with Kiseno Sato.
Yep.
And now we're seeing the best version of Kiseno Sato that we've seen in a really long time. And you can't help but think that that's going to have a positive effect.
I hope so.
I really hope so too. But it's tough because we don't know. We've seen Takayasu. We saw him come back from Kadoban. He was injured. He came back. Still didn't really look great. He had we don't need to go down this path. But he had a win against Taki.
That match. You're going to talk about that match, aren't you?
Some people say it wasn't a win. So it wasn't really smooth sailing for him last time out. And it is a bit of a jump to go, well, he's going to come back from injury and kind of narrowly clearing that Kadoban to all of a sudden he's a yusho contender, either coincidentally or just because, his old mate's back. Yeah. So I would just like to see him consolidate, show some progress. Yep. If he can put 10 or 11 on the board, I think that would be a great tournament from Takayasu.
I think so too. So Andy, thoughts about Takayasu?
Totally agree. I'm setting my bar a little bit lower, and thinking that 9 wins, maybe even 8, just making sure that he's not making sure that we don't have another case of Kadoban twins or Kadoban triplets. So I think that this time out, given all of the injury issues, the Ozeki, all of them seem to be Tochinoshin's going to need to win, and I think that Goedo and Takayasu will be able to also. They'll be able to put together at least 8.
So you teed it up there. So the great Georgian hope Tochinoshin has continuing to try and nurse his injuries back to health. There are reports that he's having a tough time even with Keiko right now, and that he's not really necessarily doing full strength practice matches. He's coming into Aki Kadoban. He's got to get 8 wins to keep that Ozeki title. He had this huge groundswell of support as he made his march towards Ozeki, especially from his native fans in Georgia. I caught a lot of fire on the blog for saying, hey, look, this guy, when he's healthy, fights like a madman, but he can't stay healthy. Andy, thoughts about Tochinoshin?
I just hope he doesn't blow his knee out against Ichinoto.
Yep.
He's going to. I guess it's another situation like Kodo Shogiku, where I see they depend on the one trick and they do it really, really, really well. But I think that Tochinoshin may have an easier path to expanding his repertoire a bit and adding in some throws.
Yeah, he's been working on it. You can see that he's been working on it, but he's still, when he gets backed into a corner, he goes for the furniture lift and shift mode.
I just can't wait to see a Tochinoshin half Henka Atakikomi, if I can pronounce it. I think that he is going to need to expand a little bit, but the knee is going to limit him with those as well. But you can't just lift 200 kilograms of rikishi every day and expect not to be hurt after a fortnight of doing it. So,
Josh, thoughts about Tochinoshin?
Sure, I think he's been smart, and where we've seen a lot of folks come off of injuries and then they're right back on tour. We didn't really see him for a lot of the first part of that tour, and he came back towards the end. But I have him potentially as a surprise contender. Say it a little quietly, but
that'd be great.
When you look at the Banzuke, when you look at the list, and before we even got into the whole conversation of who's Genki, who's not Genki, it's really hard to figure out who's the person who's going to challenge for a yusho. But I think he's got to be in that conversation because, first of all, he really likes to do everything with a little bit of an exclamation point on the end. We saw that with his Ozeki run. We saw that with how he won a yusho. He is Kadoban. He needs to win. And so he's going to come out all guns blazing. There's no question about that. Now, how many guns he has to blaze is a totally different question altogether. But I think we are going to see the best of whatever it is he has to give, because the path, when you look at the story of his career and what it took for him to come all the way up and then fall all the way down, come all the way back, win the unlikely yusho, go on the Ozeki run, becomes Ozeki, all these fans, all this partying, all this stuff, for that to go away after one tournament would be crazy. So I think we're going to see a really strong performance from him, and sometimes it's mind over matter a little bit.
Let's hope that you've got your finger on something there, because I would love to see a strong performance from Tochinoshin. All right, so from the miraculous Cinderella run that was Tochinoshin, on to the current Ozeki hopeful Mitake Yumi, sitting at Sekiwaki East. He's also looked very rough during the off season, but then again, he's got this reputation for not looking well until the moment he steps on the Hanbasho Doyo, at which point he opens up a can of whoop-ass and wins. So Josh, King Tadpole, Mitake Yumi, can he do it? Can he go double digits in Tokyo, and can he secure his Ozeki promotion?
I think he can go double digits. The interesting thing that you raised there was this kind of contrast with Tochinoshin, right? Many folks are going to remember at a similar point during Tochinoshin's run, there were a lot of the same questions being asked of him that are being asked of Mitake Yumi right now. You had Yokozuna, who had been absent. There's a lot of speculation and questions over how many wins would be enough, who he might have to beat, and it wasn't this cut and dried thing. NHK guys were speculating about it. They were disagreeing with each other. And you have a similar thing now, because you don't know who's going to be there. How many Yokozuna? Will there be any Yokozuna that finish the tournament? And if so, if they do show up, how long they're going to be there? And the thing that I referred to earlier is that a Sekiwake isn't going to come up against Yokozuna or Ozeki until week 2.
Right.
And there's been so many questions health-wise and performance-wise about the guys that he's going to face in week 2. That may create this kind of variable over what it is that he needs to do to definitively kind of punch that ticket to the next level. But the good news is, as I said, Tochinoshin definitely has to show up. But I think we probably won't know how stern the opposition will be until day 4 or day 5, by which point usually Mitake Yumi's 4-0. So we'll see.
At the end of the first act, we'll see who's got it and who's not. All right, Andy, thoughts about Mitake Yumi?
Yeah, I don't want to see I guess I don't want to see a weak double digits, another Ozeki off of 10 or 11 wins. I really think that in 2 tournaments in a row, I think that he would really need to put together another tournament. I would like to see 3 strong tournaments in a row, even with the yusho, basically because there were so many injuries. I mean, I can't imagine how quickly Goedo would have become an Ozeki if he had 3 absentee Yokozuna above him. But instead, I mean, he had to go through Prime Hakuho, and he would get like 10 wins here, and then 8, and then 10, and then 11, and then 7. So he just I don't know. He's kind of set my bar a little bit higher than it would have been, because I've just seen after he got Ozeki how he's struggled to not go Kadoban. And even though he was such a solid Sekiwake. So I really, really would like to see, really 3 strong tournaments instead of just 2. And I'd like to see much stiffer competition.
So in this transition period where most of Team Tachiai expect the Yokozunas to retire within the next 2 years, it's really tough to muster any sort of stiff competition from the top. And even we're seeing, the Ozeki are frequently banged up and frequently having problems, getting in a strong record on any given basho. So I'd say I'm going to guess right now that our next Yokozuna is currently in the Makuuchi division, and that we're probably going to see someone get the rope within 18 months. But we'll just have to watch and see how that goes. So let's talk a little bit about some of these other folks. Ichinojo. Reports are that he has gained still more weight, and that his even more massive frame will be appearing at Aki. A lot of us complained about he had gotten just too heavy during Nagoya, and that it had really negatively affected his sumo. Is there any hope for Ichinojo besides moving back to Mongolia and cuddling his ponies, Andy?
I think so. I mean, he just seems so lethargic sometimes, but he's immovable for a lot of guys other than a healthy Tochinoshin, and it seems like sometimes he's able to just I don't know. It's not as bad as, I mean, obviously, like watching Aurora against like a much smaller guy where he can just kind of sometimes lean and win. Ichinojo, he is able to get some pretty big guys going, moving backwards. So I think that he'll be able to put together another Kachikoshi and coast. I don't think he necessarily has designs on Ozeki or Yokozuna at this point. I think that might be coming from other guys like Takakesho, Tamawashi, Shodai. But I think Ichinojo is perfectly happy at Sekiwake.
All right, Josh, thoughts about Ichinojo?
Well, it's funny because he says that he wants it, but he doesn't show that he wants it, right? And you see him give up at the edge consistently. I don't know how many times we saw it in the previous tournament. And that's the thing that's so disheartening, because this is not Maegashira 13, Maegashira 9, whatever. This is the business end of the competition.
Yep.
This is the business end of the day. This is where promotions are decided and yusho are decided. And that's the most disheartening thing to me about what we see with Ichinojo. And I want to see some spirit. That's what I want to see from Ichinojo.
So let's do a couple quick ones a little further down the Banzuke. One that really stands out to me is Yutakayama, who is now at Maegashira 2. He's leading the freshman class now. He's put on a good amount of mass since he hit Makuuchi and was able to hold on this time. And he looked very Genki in Nagoya. He continued to look strong during Jungyo. Of course, you can't tell too much from that. But this guy is moving, and this guy is coming up hard. If the Joy is as depleted as we think it might be with all these injuries, are we looking at a really strong contender here? Go ahead, Josh.
It's interesting because I had said last tournament I expected the biggest challenge to the eventual yusho winner to come from someone lower down the Banzuke, and it ended up being Takayama. Yep. I've always been a fan of his in particular. I can't speak to what the addition to his mass will do for a sumo. I think that's a time will tell thing, because we don't have a big enough sample size of him in the top division yet. But I think he's great. I think that he has this kind of rivalry with Asanayama that's developing. Yep. It's a similar kind of thing, both in terms of build, if not perhaps of style, to what you see with like Onosho and Takakesho. And those type of rivalries, I think, are going to be really good. They're going to be good for the future. And he has a lot of the fighting spirit that, I'm not trying to bag Ichinojo, but that he kind of lacks. Yep. And when you talk about who the guys are, they're going to be able to make the jump to the next level. I think that is going to be really important. And you saw him fight, as I said earlier, a 2-13 tournament where he fought pretty well, but he just, he wasn't ready. Now he could be ready. And he got tested a little bit towards the end of the last tournament. Yep. And I'm excited to see what he can do this time.
All right, Andy, thoughts on Yutakayama?
I think we're going to see another 2-13 tournament.
Oh!
I think Yutakayama has the I think that he will be able to get some of that consistency going. because he does get the momentum after. Basically, it seems like he's got a history of these tournaments where he gets a breakout of 10, 11 wins, but it just projects him a little bit too high for what he's really ready for, and so then he comes back to earth. But then it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I think in this case he's taken 2 steps forward. He's going to take a step back, but he'll be back.
Okay, so let's talk about someone that we've had a tough time. I don't know, tough time with Ishiura. Ishiura is I forgot who said this, duct tape to the bottom end of the Banzuke for this one. My heart goes out to the guy because he's struggling to do some small man sumo in an increasingly massive Makuuchi lineup. I mean, his heart's in the right place. He wants to win. He's got the drive, but he just doesn't seem to be able to put together a winning formula right now. Andy, any thoughts or advice for Ishiura?
I think he's going to be duct taped there at the bottom of the Banzuke for a while, at the bottom of the Makuuchi for a while, kind of like how Satoyama hung around for a bit. And then Amuru, like a lot of these guys who are kind of undersized, they'll hang around until they've got an injury that proves too much of a setback, and it sends them back down to Nigeria.
Wow.
So in this case, I mean, Ishiura is a bit more, I don't know, British Bulldog than what Satayama was, but he just hankas too much.
Yeah.
And I think that if he, I guess, was able to get more fierce and try to, engage a bit more, I think he would be able to put away some of those guys down at the bottom of the Banzuke.
All right, so you mentioned Henka, and there's that great picture that's been up on the blog of Aoyama wearing Ishiura like a fanny pack, and that's who didn't see that one coming? Josh, thoughts about Ishiura?
Okay, let's talk about Ishiura for a minute. He is a controversial guy, especially if you read the comments of the site. You'd think that he's probably the second most controversial guy that people talk about behind Goedo on the site, in terms of where people having different opinions of him and his style and this and that and the other thing. So I think in some kind of alternate universe, he can become this like Malcolm Gladwell-esque, like 10,000 hours mastery of the Henka kind of thing, where he's done the Henka more than anybody else, and he's the master more than anybody else has ever mastered the Henka, and he could give TED Talks on it, and he could do lectures about the Henka. So I actually think he's a real cool guy if you look at, his Instagram, but he doesn't really seem to be all that popular with sumo fans, which is kind of crazy. We have a lot of Australian followers on the site, and there are a lot of Australian fans of sumo generally, and he spent a lot of time in the country, and you still don't get a lot of people.
I know, he gets no respect. He's kind of Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah, so as far as his sumo is concerned, he's in the last place in the Banzuke now. I think it's a positive thing for him because there's nowhere to hide. There's no 6 or 7 this time. You got to get 8 no matter what.
Or you're gone, yeah.
Drop down to 0 before briefly. But I think sumo needs a guy like him because he presents a different take. Even if, I've likened the Henka before to like a curveball. You got a pitcher who throws 100 miles an hour. He mixes in a curveball every now and again. It's a surprise. With Ishiura, he only really throws the curveball. And then when he throws the fastball, it's a surprise when he actually does what we would call traditional sumo. So, listen, if he gets 8 wins and it works, I don't care how he does it. I don't care if he does 15 Henkas and 8 of them come off. I think he is better when he mixes in some good sumo. And the guy has some decent arm strength from all those protein shakes. So I'm a fan. And I hope that he can kind of hang in there and hang around. And I'm pulling for him.
So let's talk protein shakes. Very nice. So let's talk about the crowd that came up from Juryo for Aki, because it includes a former fan favorite in Takanoiwa, Also the rather enigmatic sort of, I don't know, I call him Mr. 5x5, Kota Yuki, as well as sort of new debutante Takanosho. So, Josh, some thoughts about the folks up from Juryo, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Kota Yuki's fun because he kind of has this ritual before the match that is very sort of like a poor man's Hakuho kind of thing that he has going on if you watch it. And it's like you can tell he's aspiring to sort of strike fear the same way that Hakuho does, and he doesn't. But I like him. I think he's a likable guy. I liken him a bit to his stablemate who we just saw, Koto Eko, who came up last time, in the sense that like the ceiling for these guys is like a Sadanoumi yo-yo Rikishi that just keeps going up and down between the two divisions. That's how I feel about him. Takanoiwa, he took a couple basho to get himself back up to speed, but then he had a very convincing yusho. Yep. So,
yeah, he looked strong. He looked strong in Nagoya, in spite of the heat and all the rest of it. All right, so hey, I just want to say, Josh, I know you're a big music aficionado. Is that there was a song in the 40s by the Andrews Sisters, Mr. 5x5, which I think should be Kota Yuki's theme song if Rikishi get theme songs.
They should.
Okay, so Andy, thoughts about Kota Yuki, Takanoiwa, and Takanosho making their way into Makuuchi for this tournament?
It'll be great to see more of Takanosho. I haven't been able to see very much of him so far, so I'm looking forward to it. But as far as Takanoiwa and Kota Yuki, I think those guys are much better than the lower end of the Banzuke. Those guys, if healthy, Kota Yuki, I think, could be a mainstay in the Joy or at least in the middle Maegashira. Yep. And Takanoiwa, I don't know, I feel like he and Tamawashi are kind of similar in their capabilities, and so I wouldn't be surprised to see both of them having a very good tournament. I think Kota Yuki, though, is still probably hampered a bit with his knee injuries, I think, and so I wouldn't expect him rising as quickly as Takanoiwa, but I'm excited to see what Takanoiwa will do this tournament.
Excellent.
I just add about Takanoiwa real quickly. Leon had said on the site that he was surprised that Takanoiwa was ranked so low. He would have thought that the promotions would have been a little bit more aggressive. And I think, to Andy's point, that's a great thing for him because it gives him a minute to settle in there at potentially, however slightly, a slightly less, perhaps, level of competition. Maybe he even gets thrown in there against a Juryo guy. Who knows? Probably not. But it puts him in a position to have that better tournament and move forward. And then as far as Takanosho is concerned, just for people who don't know, he made pretty quick work of Juryo. He was only down there for a handful of tournaments when he came up. And the curious thing for me is we've seen contrasting fortunes from the guys who've come up recently. Last time, Meisei and Koto Eko went straight back down and couldn't really hack it on their first try. But Kyoku Taisei did pretty well. He did great his first time out. He did okay last time in the Makekoshi. But Asanoyama and Yutakayama came up and have largely stuck and consolidated their place. And so where he can kind of fit into that will be an interesting watch.
All right, so we would be remiss if we didn't take advantage of the fact that Josh has joined us for yet another podcast. Let's look further down the Banzuke. Let's talk about ones to watch. Josh, pick out a few Rikishi and tell us about some folks further down the Banzuke and what you think's going on there.
Well, it's a really exciting tournament because now we talked about these guys last time. We continue to talk about them, but Naya and Hoshoryu are making their debuts at the Makushita level. They're very far down there. They're right at the bottom. I think Naya's actually Makushita 60, but it's going to be great to see those guys. As I said, I thought they were probably 2 to 4 tournaments last time away from making their way up to what we call the sort of Makushita Joy, up there competing for promotion to the professional ranks, and they continue to go really quickly. In terms of who's pushing for the next promotion to Juryo. I mean, we could go several divisions down, but I think the things that people care about are who they're going to see next. One guy that we've talked a little bit about on the site for a while now is this guy Tomokaze.
Yep.
He's from Bruce's favorite stable, Oguruma Beya. And he's right there on the edge. He's a similar profile to another Rikishi who's been up there recently called Murata. Murata was at Makushita 1 last time. He went Kyujo. It was a disaster, no wins. So we're hoping for better from Tomokaze. If he gets a good tournament together, he could be promoted this time. And I think that Churanumi, who fell out of Juryo, is a good bet to bounce back. And then you've got a couple guys up there. Kizen Ryu is like the Juryo Makushita yo-yo. And then the really big name, although he's not a one to watch, is our old mate Toyonoshima, who is now, he's flying his way all the way back to Makushita 1. It would be an amazing story for him to come back.
Yes, it would.
I think, you know, he was last seen in the top division over 2 years ago, and there's a little spice there. We talked about this a little while ago, but he has this weird retirement two-way suicide pact with Koto Shogiku, where we know Koto Shogiku owns elder stock. He could retire anytime. He's a former Ozeki. He's a yusho champion. We love him. But he said, I'm down the rank and file, but I'm not retiring until Toyonoshima comes back to Makuchi, and we will renew our rivalry. And I think in a period where you have some really sad situations with aging Rikishi, not to name any names, but maybe some stablemates of Tomokaze, then I think that's a really cool subplot, and I think it's interesting. I wish Toyonoshima the best. I hope he gets Kachikoshi.
I hope he does too. That would be something to watch. Andy, any ones to watch you want to bring up that Josh didn't already run through?
I would just add one more Toyo Hibiki.
Yes.
I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing him coming back. And Chio Otori, he seemed to be a bit more healthy and stable last tournament. So I've got hopes for the three of those, Toyoshima, Toyo Hibiki, and Chio Otori. While it seems like Homare Fuji, Sokokurai, and Teruno Fuji are still like they're going to be struggling in Makushita, maybe from their injuries for another tournament or so. But I'm looking forward to seeing my favorite Japanese whiskey, the Hibiki back.
All right, I'll throw a few in. Although it's only Juryo, I'm really starting to think that Tobizaru has settled into his sumo, and that he's going to be a force during Aki down in the second division. I have my eye on him because I think that a strong showing here could get him in the top third of Juryo going into to Kyushu. I'd also, of course, be completely remiss if I did not mention Waki Ichiro from Texas, who, after a nail biter finish to get his Kachikoshi, is now at Sandanmei 77, and he always fights better in Tokyo. I don't know if it's he doesn't like being away from the Heiya or what's going on, but I think it's going to be very interesting to watch this young man try to hit and hold Sandanmei this time in a big way. And while we're in Sandanmei, let's talk about the Have You Seen Me milk carton Rikishi, none other than Ura. Ura's down at 91 in Sandanmei, and nobody knows if he's going to enter Aki or not. For fans who are wondering, yes, it's the guy in the pink Mawashi who did the magic tricks and nobody could touch. But he blew out his knee, he had reconstructive surgery, and he's taking the slow route back, and we all applaud that. Is he ready to go? I hope that he doesn't enter until he's ready to go. But when he does, I can't wait to see the body parts flying out of the ring as this guy reestablishes himself in sumo. So I guess that'll be it for the ones to watch. Let's move on now into talking about forecast and predictions. So it's time to put them on the table, lay them out on the line, and try to take your best guess on what on earth is going to happen. You don't need to pick the yusho winner, but try to give us your opinion on outcomes from Aki. Let's start with site creator Andy. Go ahead.
Tamawashi Yusho.
Oh my God.
I mean, he's just demolishing people. So yeah, I'm gonna go out with that and
way
say
out on a limb.
I think that another I guess Rikishi with prelim arms. I'm gonna go with Abi getting a special prize. He can do. He is one of those guys in the Joy who can hang with all of those the Sanyaku wrestlers, even when they're healthy. So I'm looking forward to seeing Abi and seeing what he can bring.
Okay, Josh, your turn. Can you top that one?
No, I cannot top that one for sure. I'm not even going to try. Last time out, I said we'd get a yusho challenger from the nether regions, and we did with Takayama. I think we'll see that again, but maybe from a bit higher up the Banzuke. There's some interesting guys if you look at who's around. Maegashira 5, 6, 7. Onosho looks okay. Maybe he could go on a little run. This could be a ranking looks good for him. I know you like Kagayaki.
Yep.
He could be someone who's set for a little bit of further improvement.
Yep.
I like the ranks for Daishomaru and Daisho and Hokuto Fuji. And even though I'm not a big fan of him, I think Aoyama could do well at the rank that he's at. So there are a lot of guys in this sort of like second half of the Maegashira ranks who are positioned pretty well relative to their skill set. Maybe they're not guys who would do so well up in the Joy, but they're not there. So this could be a good tournament for some of those guys. In terms of Yusho, I think it's wide open because we don't know who's going to be there. But I don't think Mitakeumi will repeat. So I'm going to say it's a thunderous comeback from Tochinoshin. Why not? Who has to go all out to clear the Kataban anyway? Why not a Yusho challenge? And what are predictions other than things to make us look foolish? So I'm happy to wear that one in the inevitability that it does not come to pass.
Nice. All right, time for me to take my crack. I made both of you walk the plank, so I'll go next. I think my favorite for the Yusho is going to be Takayasu. He is long overdue. I think that if he gets some training time in with Kisano Sato, he may be able to settle down into strong, low, and deliberate sumo, which is the hallmark of when we can count on him winning. I think Yoshikaze is back from the dead, and I think that we are going to see absolute carnage at the bottom of the Banzuke as the Berserker gives it one more shout before his sunset ride. I also think that we're going to see 10 wins or more out of Mitakeumi, and we will see our fourth Ozeki installed shortly following the Aki Basho. And that's pretty much as far as I'm going to go, except to say I think we may see some fireworks from Takakeisho. I don't know if he's quite ready yet to do anything above Komusubi, but I think he's going to have a great tournament. And with that, let's wrap the show up. Josh, Andy, thank you very much for joining me for the Aki podcast. It's been a blast, guys. And fans, thank you very much for following the site, for watching our videos, listening to our podcast. And remember, when you think sumo, it's Tachiai.